Hi guys, thank you for clicking on this video. My name's Aisha and this is Aisha's Crime Tales. Today we are going to be talking about a 31-year-old man named Valdo Calocane who in June 2023 took the lives of 3 people and also injured another 3 more. Valdo Amasao Mendez Calocane was born on the 4th of September 1991 in Guinea-Bissau. He was then brought to the UK in 2007 as a young boy, and he spent the majority of his childhood in Haverfordwest in Pembrokeshire, Wales. His mother, Celeste, works as an intensive care nurse at the local Withybush hospital. His father, Amasao, works as a carer, and his brother Elias went on to study at the University of Cambridge. The family were regular worshippers at the Calvary Church in fellowship with the Assemblies of God. The whole family had been described as high achievers. Valdo himself had always been quite academically successful, with his classmates from Sir Thomas Picton School describing him as intelligent with a keen appetite for football and the sciences. Valdo would go on to enrol in Nottingham University to study mechanical engineering, which he graduated in 2022. Valdo was said to have developed paranoid schizophrenia in the wake of the COVID lockdowns back in 2020, and he started to hear voices in his head, which at times he believed were real. As a much older student, Valdo was said to have struggled to mix in with his peers at the university. It said that he had been behaving quite strangely with his flatmates as well, with one of his flatmates claiming to have been woken up by Valdo standing over his bed and watching him sleep, which I'm sure would have been very, very strange for anybody. Imagine that, just waking up and some dude is like sat there or stood there staring at you while you're sleeping. I think I'd be pretty freaked out by that. His brother told investigators that he became aware of Valdo's mental health issues when he was studying at university. He said that his brother had come to believe that he was being spied on by his flatmates and that he was being controlled by radio and sonic control. In May of 2020, Valdo appeared at the hospital claiming that he thought he was having a heart attack, but it was found that this wasn't the case and he was discharged. The same day as he was discharged from the hospital, he went and got himself arrested on suspicion of criminal damage for going home back to it was a shared building. He went back and damaged a door. An assessment under the Mental Health Act was carried out at the Nottingham custody suite by the psychiatric services. They deemed that Valdo was psychotic, but that his risk to others was low. Obviously, this is not the case, because if this was the case, we wouldn't be talking about him today. He was then referred to the community crisis team for review at home and released without charge. Then, within 1 hour of being released, he then went and knocked down another door and he was arrested again for criminal damage. This led to him being admitted to the inpatient service at Highbridge Hospital in Nottingham. He was discharged the following month in June 2020 into the care of Nottingham City's crisis care team. At this time, he was advised to take antipsychotic medication for the next 6 to 9 months, yet within a month, in July of 2020, he was readmitted to the hospital for failing to take his medication. Now, refusing to take his medication and hearing these voices and thinking that they are real seems to be quite a common reoccurrence during Valdo's life. At one point, Valdo even travelled all the way to the MI5 headquarters in London to hand himself in, thinking that the MI5 were controlling him. He's been caught on CCTV shouting out, "Please arrest me." For some reason, Valdo was convinced that the MI5 people would be able to stop the voices in his head. How is beyond me. Over the following year, it's believed that he was actively concealing symptoms of psychosis and evading the community crisis team, which meeting with the community crisis team was a part of the conditions of him being released from the hospital. A warrant was then executed to enter his property on the 3rd of September 2021 so that they could go and do an assessment on him. During this interaction, Valdo assaulted a police officer and he was arrested once again. A bag of unused medication dated from the previous February was found at his address, which goes to show that he was yet again not taking his medication. Valdo was again admitted to the inpatient services, and on his release, he then kept becoming confrontational with the community crisis team and kept missing appointments. Again, this seems to be a bit of a theme. Even following a confrontation with a flatmate in January 2022, another medical assessment concluded that he was suitable to be treated in the community by the community care team. This hasn't worked the past 3-4 times. Why would it work this time? Beyond me. But a overworked and underfunded psychiatric team has clearly led to a lot of missed warning signs. Because there are many times in this case where he could have been stopped, he could have been helped, something could have been done to prevent what happens next, but it wasn't. In the months leading up to the brutal events of today's case, Valdo had been living in a multi-occupancy building with other people who described him as being quite quiet and said that he only used one plate, which he didn't wash, which is disgusting. And I'm surprised he didn't get sick. That is gross. It also emerged that 5 months prior to the attacks, Valdo was working in a warehouse in Kegworth, Leicester, where he attacked 2 of his co-workers. The main 3 victims of today's case were 19-year-old Grace O'Malley Kumar, 19-year-old Barnaby Webber, and 65-year-old Ian Coates. Grace O'Malley Kumar was the much-loved daughter of Sinead O'Malley, Sanjoy Kumar, and the much-loved sister of James O'Malley Kumar. Grace was described as a trailblazer because of her many, many achievements. She was the first ladies' county cricketer at Bancroft School, pushing the boundaries of cricket there, and her hockey was at an even higher level. She represented England in the under-16s and the under-18s, and she later played for Nottingham University's first ladies team in the Premiership. And in her very first year of university, she was a part of the British Universities and College 2023 gold medal winning team. Now, this was one of her best and most favourite memories, which made her so proud of herself. Now, Grace also excelled academically. She worked really hard and she managed to secure herself a place at Nottingham's medical school. Her parents said that all she really wanted was to play hockey and to become a doctor. She had an extremely caring nature. She loved all of her friends, all of her classmates, all of her teammates. She had the warmest heart and she would always like to include people. She was so attuned to sadness in others and she would do anything she could to try and cheer people up. She would take people out, she would introduce them to other people, and she would form these group friendships. Grace was pretty much loved by everybody that knew her. 19-year-old Barnaby Webber, who was friends with Grace, was also quite a talented cricketer. His family said that he was probably one of the most genuine people that you could ever meet. They said that he was so funny, that he loved his life and he was living it to the fullest. Barnaby was a history student from Taunton, and he was coming to the end of his first year at Nottingham University. Barnaby loved Nottingham. He was an extremely popular young man, and his family said that he always couldn't wait to go back to the city whenever he went home to visit them. The final of these three main victims was 65-year-old Ian Coates, who worked as a caretaker. He worked at the LEAD Academy Trust and Huntington Academy. The head teacher of the school described him as a much loved colleague who would go above and beyond for the benefit of the children. Ian was a keen fisherman, and he was a Nottingham Forest fan. Ian had bought a brand new Volkswagen van in May, just weeks before the devastating attacks. And I mention this because this van kind of crops up again a little bit later. For the students at Nottingham University, the 12th of June was a joyous occasion and cause for celebration. The end of year exams had just come to an end and summer was just about to begin. But on this day, 31-year-old Valdo Calocane was in the grips of a very severe psychotic break and was said to have lost sight of humanity and the right to life. CCTV footage taken in the early hours of June 13th showed Valdo walking around dressed all in black with a beanie hat covering his face with a clear intention to harm. He was armed with a dagger, 2 knives and a scaffold pole in his bag to serve as backup should he need it. Grace and Barnaby had just left a nightclub in Nottingham city centre and were making the 200-yard walk back to their student accommodation. They were walking down Ilkeston Road in the Radford area of Nottingham when they came face to face with Valdo, who was waiting in the shadows to select his victims. Valdo approached the 2 teenagers, pulled the dagger out of his bag and began viciously attacking Barnaby, stabbing him over and over and over again. Grace was the kind of person who would never leave a friend, so in a bid to try and save Barnaby, she began to scream for help, and she very bravely tried to fight Valdo off herself, but he would then turn his attention to her. Valdo was just as brutal in his attack of Grace as he had been with his attack on Barnaby, and he began stabbing her repeatedly. Grace's injuries were severe and she collapsed to the ground, at which point Valdo then turned his attention back to Barnaby, who was kicking, trying to defend himself from the ground. Valdo then very calmly walked away and left them to succumb to their injuries. Grace somehow managed to get back to her feet. She stumbled to the nearby house where she collapsed on the doorstep, still screaming for help. A third-year student was the first to come across this horrific scene, and she called the police. This was at 4 a.m. An eyewitness told police that he had seen the attack on these 2 teenagers. He said that he had heard an awful scream and that he had seen a man dressed all in black with a black hood and rucksack fighting with some people. He said that he watched Barnaby collapse to the ground and watched Grace as she disappeared around the side of a house. Police and paramedics arrived quickly to the scene, but both Grace and Barnaby's injuries were unsurvivable, having been stabbed in the abdomen, in the stomach, and the arms and the hands. Much of this attack was captured by CCTV from the dash cam of a taxi which had been parked overlooking Ilkeston Road. It was also videoed on the mobile phone of a neighbour. That footage showed the brutality of this attack and the merciless way in which Valdo had acted. After Valdo had so calmly left the scene, he was then captured on CCTV trying to break into a bedroom window on the ground floor of Sealyhurst Hostel in Mapperley Road, just a short while away from where the attacks took place on Ilkeston Road. He arrived at the hostel at around 5 a.m, where he sought access through one of the downstairs windows with the intent to go in and to kill everybody inside. But he was then confronted by one of the occupants of the building, who proceeded to punch him in the face. Less than an hour after the attack on Barnaby and Grace, Valdo then made a phone call to his brother where he said, "This will be the last time I speak to you. Take the family out of the country." When his brother asked him if he was about to do something stupid, Valdo replied with, "It's already done." Valdo then made his way to Magdala Road, where Ian Coates, who was only 5 months away from retiring as his job as a caretaker, was driving his new Vauxhall van. Ian was lured out of his van and he was also brutally stabbed by Valdo in the chest and in the stomach. He was then left in the street to die, and Valdo stole his van and drove off in search of more victims. Ian Coates was discovered by members of the public shortly after 5:30 a.m, where he was pronounced dead on the scene by the police as soon as they arrived. Valdo, who was now driving Ian's van, then came across a man named Wayne Burkett, who was crossing the road in the city centre. He deliberately swerved to hit Wayne from behind at speed. Thankfully, he did survive this collision, but has been left with life-changing injuries. Wayne suffered serious brain damage as a result of this and lost his ability to perform the most straightforward of tasks and is no longer able to look after himself properly. It also changed his personality and he lost interest in the things that made his life worth living, such as football and socialising with his friends. Wayne's physical injuries included a dislocated shoulder and injuries to his chest, his back and his pelvis, which would leave him living the rest of his life in constant pain. Following this incident, Wayne at times feels like it would have been better for everybody if he had also died. An officer driving a single crewed vehicle was responding to a call when he came across the van being driven by Valdo. The dashcam footage showed that this officer had sight of the vehicle for no longer than 2 minutes before Valdo swerved the van to hit 2 pedestrians who were standing in the central reservation in the Sherwood Street area. He struck them at speed from behind, fully intending to kill them. The officer immediately pulled over, got out of his car and started to administer first aid to these 2 victims. The 2 victims of this incident were Sharon Miller and Marcian Goronsky. Both of them were extremely lucky to have survived this collision. Marcian sustained broken ribs, an injury to his left leg, and cuts all over his head and his body. Sharon sustained injuries to her legs and her body, which left her in chronic pain and unable to leave the house for months, and it's said that she may never be able to return to work. Valdo managed to take the lives of 3 people and change the lives of 3 more in the space of only a few hours. Just after 5:30 a.m, Valdo approached the police with a knife. He was tasered outside in Bentnick Forest Fields and was arrested on suspicion of murder. When recalling the events of June 13th, 2023, Barnaby's mother said that she was working away in Cornwall. She was watching the BBC News when the TV suddenly turned to a breaking incident in Nottingham. Now, this piqued her interest because she knew that her eldest son, Barnaby, was in that city over 300 miles away from her. Her husband, David, decided to give him a call, make sure he's all right, but he didn't answer. Now, at first, obviously, they weren't too concerned. They thought, well, he's probably just sleeping off a night out and we'll hear from him tomorrow. He'll ring us back. Also, the news report had said that it was a man and a woman who had been killed. Now, Barnaby's mum obviously thought that even though he was 19, it couldn't be him because to her, he still felt like a child. Then they heard that the incident had happened on Ilkeston Road, so they went and checked his location on a mobile app and they found a match that he was actually in Ilkeston Road. At this point, I can imagine they then started to think, oh, something might be wrong here. They then attempted to get hold of Barnaby again and again, and probably again and again and again, but because they got no answer, they then decided to ring a Nottingham police station, but the police couldn't tell them anything. So they decided that they would just keep checking his location on his phone. Then, a short while later, when they noticed that his phone had been taken from Ilkeston Road to a police station, they instantly knew that something bad must have happened to their son. Barnaby's parents then decided to jump in their car and head straight for Nottingham. They were in their car for less than 3 miles before the phone rang. It was a police officer from the same police station that David had tried to ring not only a few hours before. They remember the police officer asking them if they could pull over. Mr. Webber explained, "My world just fell apart. I don't remember too much after that. We were a normal family, just like many up and down the country. Our world changed just like that." Now they knew what had happened to Barnaby, Mr. and Mrs. Webber decided to drive to Torquay, where Barnaby's 16-year-old brother was away on a camp, to go and tell him what had happened. Mrs. Webber said, "I had this sinking feeling we were going to change his life forever in the next 20 seconds. It was heartbreaking. He kept saying, 'It can't be true,' and 'I can't live without him.' It was awful, as anyone can imagine." In the days following these attacks, thousands of people attended vigils for the youngsters and for Ian at both the Nottingham University and in the city centre. The Webber family were invited to Nottingham University, where they were told that a vigil was going to be taking place. They thought the vigil would just be a small occasion, so they didn't really give it much thought until they got there and walked in to find thousands of students had gathered in silence. The next day, the families of the 3 victims made their way to the Old Market Square for a second vigil. Mrs. Webber said when talking about attending these vigils, "It was utterly overwhelming. We were shown the best of humanity against the worst of humanity. You could feel the energy. It's difficult to explain. You could almost touch it. The outpouring of respect, horror, and sadness. I don't think anyone can prepare you to be thrust into the limelight in the way that we were and to see so many people affected." Barnaby's heartbroken mother told the sea of people that the monstrous individual responsible for the deaths will not define them. Bravely speaking while fighting back tears, she said, "I know he will receive the retribution he deserves. However, this evil person is just that. He's a person. Please hold no hate that relates to any colour, sex or religion. I want you to know that he is more than a victim of senseless murder. He loved pesto pasta. He hated cottage pie. He was obsessed with aeroplanes and still carried a dream of being a pilot for the RAF one day." Addressing Barnaby, she added, "My beautiful boy, you have mine, your dad, and your brother's heart forever." Grace's family were also choking back tears as they delivered such heartfelt words. and they told about how their family of 4 had just become 3. Her mother, Sinead, said, "My beautiful baby girl, she wasn't just beautiful on the outside. You must have seen her pictures. She was so beautiful on the inside. She was a treasure, an adored child. She wanted very few things in life. She wanted to be a doctor. She wanted to play hockey with her pals. She wanted to have fun. All they were doing was walking home. We're just going home after a night out. And like Emma Webber says, this person must face justice. It's so unfair, but I'll echo what my husband said yesterday. Be kind to each other. Look after each other. Don't have hate in your hearts. Say prayers for my baby girl." Grace's younger brother, James, also battled through tears to pay his respects to his sister, saying, "Grace wasn't only just my sister to me, she was a best friend of mine, my mother, my father, all her friends, all her family. If there's one message that comes out of this, I urge you all to cherish every moment you spend with your loved ones, as you just might never know when it might end." Barnaby's family were determined to go and visit the place where he lost his life. His mother explained, "I needed to go where it had happened. I refused to leave before I had been there. We walked down Ilkeston Road, and what struck me was how close it was to where he lived. We were taken to the spot where this monster did what he did. They were minutes away from being safe." On the 16th of June 2023, Valdo Calocane was charged with 3 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. On the 17th, he was remanded into custody. In November 2023, Valdo denied 3 counts of murder and admitted to 3 counts of manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility for the murders of Grace, Barnaby and Ian. He also admitted to 3 counts of attempted murder for ploughing the van into Shannon, Marcian and Wayne. After being reviewed by multiple psychiatrists, Valdo's pleas were accepted by the prosecution on the 24th of January 2024, and he was sentenced at Nottingham Crown Court to be detained indefinitely at a high security hospital. He is now likely to be detained there for the rest of his life, and so he should. Addressing Valdo in the dock, Grace's mother, Sinead O'Malley, said, "You are medically non-compliant and are never to be trusted. You remain a danger to society and the wider public. We know justice will be served and the public needs to be protected from you." In a joint statement issued to the PA news agency, the families of the victims said, "The loss of our children has devastated our families. Our grief has no boundaries. Over the past 5.5 months, we have struggled to come to terms with the needless and horrific attack that led to them losing their lives and their bright futures on June 13th. We will leave no stone unturned in ensuring justice is properly served for Barnaby and Grace, and for all those affected by the devastating events of that evening. We have taken great comfort from the support of the public and will push to make sure lessons are learned from this incident." One of Ian Coates' sons said that his death has rocked everybody's worlds, that nobody deserves this, but especially he didn't. Ian's sister, Susan Coates, said, "He took 3 lives and attempted to take 3 others. However they term it, to me it wasn't manslaughter, he slaughtered, and for that I can't forgive him." Speaking about her brother, she said, "He was such a kind man and all he was doing was going to work. What he did leave was a legacy of love. I'm really proud that in the life he did have, he made a massive impact and that he impacted on everyone." Following her death, Grace's family have set up the Grace O'Malley Kumar Foundation. On this website, they say, Grace was loved endlessly by all, and everything she gave to the world in her short 19 years should never be forgotten. The Grace O'Malley Kumar Foundation has been set up to fund causes that Grace supported, that embodied her values, and to build an enduring legacy to keep her memory alive. We are most proud of Grace's qualities as a human. Her caring nature is what we believe is one of Grace's most significant legacies, and a quality that we would highly encourage in peer groups. No one should feel lonely or marginalised. Everyone should have someone they can turn to. Sometimes these relationships need to be generated in advance to avoid loneliness, isolation, and to facilitate speaking to a group of peers. Hence, the proposition of Grace Groups is a continuing project for the Foundation. The website then goes on to explain the aim of Grace Groups by saying, Grace was a caring person, always putting others before herself and making sure no one should feel left out or excluded. She stood up against bullies and cliques. We sincerely and strongly believe that if we had a student grouping structure where we had empathy groups, pastoral groups, and for Grace's legacy, let's call them Grace Groups, we would have empathy and compassion forced back to the forefront by grouping students every year with cumulative effect of 8 to 10 years. Perhaps the atrocities that took place in Nottingham 13th of June 2023 and the harm that takes place every single day would happen less. We sincerely believe it would happen less. For part of Grace's legacy, we would sincerely wish to see the implementation of Grace Groups in schools, colleges and universities up and down the country. And as for our part, we will make it our responsibility for Grace's legacy to discuss this concept with schools, colleges, universities and with departments of education and welfare. On Tuesday, the 30th of April 2024, Grace's family called for her to be awarded the St. George's Cross. This is an award that recognises the greatest heroism or conspicuous courage in the face of extreme danger. Rishi Sunak, the former Prime Minister, backed these calls for Grace to be awarded the George's Cross. Downing Street weighed in and said that they would certainly back the family's campaign, and they paid tribute to the bravery that Grace showed in the face of perilous and terrifying danger. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister noted that the decisions surrounding the George's Cross are made by an independent committee for review and that the final decision lays with His Majesty the King, but that the Prime Minister would definitely support these nominations. The spokesperson said, "The leadership example she provided in the tragic circumstance was commendable, and absolutely the PM would get behind that campaign." Valdo's actions that day affected the lives of so many people, and he will most likely and justifiably spend the rest of his life locked up in a secure hospital. Although I do really hope that he now finally receives the help that he so clearly needs. And that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you have a story that you would like to share or something that you would like me to talk about, you can contact me via my email, or you could leave me a comment down below. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe. It is a free and easy way that you can support my channel. And until next time, remember to be kind to everyone around you, because you never know what someone else might be going through, and a little bit of kindness and compassion can go a long way. Bye bye for now.